I showed you this, didn't I? So let's go and get, did I show you this? War declared by all? Where do we finish? Here?
Yeah.
Is that right where we finish? Okay. So, went through the whole thing of the July crisis. I'll come back and review in just a second, but so did I show you this easy to follow? You're kind of curious about that? Oh, and I mentioned, obviously, what happened in the war. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated by Slavic nationalists, so naturally, Germany had to attack whom? France. Obviously, it's so simple that way. But it also shows the problem of everyone being on a hair trigger. Everyone being on a hair trigger. Everyone ready for war. Everybody. And all these interlocking alliances and secret agreements, and nobody knew who said what to whom. And it's kind of amazing how this system would go on after World War II, and we're all still here. And so here is the headline from newspaper headline: War declared by all. Okay, that was from The Onion, the satirical newspaper. And the great thing about satire is, good satire, which I like, you have to have a little bit of reality and then exaggerate it for effect. That is a real newspaper. That is a real one. What's that?
Are you friends with Mr. Ward?
Yeah, we're literally learning about satire right now.
Yesterday was intro to
I see him talk to him all the time in lunch.
To who?
Mr. Ward.
Mr.
Who's right above you?
Ward was my student.
Oh, that's weird.
I've been here a really long time. There's a lot of teachers who are my students. So, Germany declares war, all Europe is in arms. Look at the real one. I mean, the real one is pretty close to the fake one. It's kind of amazing. And I love Austria declares war, and Serbia declares war, and Germany declares war, and France declares war, Turkey declares war, Russia declares war, and Bulgaria declares war on Britain. Ottoman Empire almost declares war on itself. Nations struggle to remember allies. I like Area Drunkard declares war on Ireland. And then my personal favorite, assassination of Archduke spreads fear at Archduke convention. So, with that, so that's a great, I love that book. There's some I can't show you, but I'll show you a couple more of the headlines. And here's another, this is a British version of that map. And now you have a British bulldog nipping the nose of the German dachshund. And various dogs. And what are these?
Yes.
Otters. I see otters, but they're dogs, so I don't know.
There's a bear.
Yeah, there's a bear, and the Russian steamroller was pro-Russia.
Oh yeah, it's steamrolling over the dogs.
Yeah, that because it's Austria. That was a nickname for Russia because of its size, the Russian steamroller. Because it had so many people, such a big country, they would just steamroll over others. Did that happen? Not really here. I don't know. What were they thinking in 1914? So, speaking of 1914, let's get to August 1914. August 4th, that is considered the day that it became a world war. So the fighting has already begun. And it's pretty basic. If Germany was going to attack France, they went through what country? Belgium, yeah? And so they put an ultimatum on Belgium on the August 2nd. Let us through or we attack. Belgium held out. And so Britain put an ultimatum on them. So we have German on Belgium and then Britain on Germany. UK, United Kingdom. And basically on the 3rd, the United Kingdom said, if Germany doesn't pull out of Belgium, we will declare war. So Britain had decided they could not tolerate not only German control of Belgium, but German domination of the European continent. And so they picked a side, even though there was an entente. So on August 4th, this is a English newspaper, so it's England, but it's Great Britain, United Kingdom declared war. And once that happened, it became a worldwide war. And it almost ensured that, or it turned out to ensure that the war would not be a short one, and it soon would be fought all over the world. As German colonies are going to be attacked, British allies will enter the war. So within a couple months, there's going to be a massive sea battle just off the coast of Chile between German and British ships, all in World War I, 1914. A German victory. So it would soon be dubbed the Great War. And on September 1st, 1939, literally in the extras of that afternoon's morning papers, they were starting to call the Great War World War I. What happened on September 1st, 1939?
World War II started.
Germany invaded Poland, World War II. And after the war, they also called it the war to end all wars, which makes it even kind of more tragic and sad. They were hoping we'd never be this crazy to do it again. Oh, we are. We're that crazy. We're even more crazy. So, every single country who entered this war believed they were fighting a just and defensive war. Every country believed that they were about to be attacked and they had to go to war. But before you write preventative war down, which one of the powers, especially the great powers, had no choice? Germany, Austria, Russia, France, Britain. Which one had no choice? Germany had a choice. France. France is the only one who didn't have a choice. Every other country had a choice. Every other one. Every other one could have done something to get out of this war, to stop it, and they didn't do it. And Germany, without a doubt, is the one that's most at fault. Because Austria, yes, they were considered one of the great powers, but they never would have attacked Serbia the way they did without the blank check. Without German either negligence or outright pushing for war by the foreign ministry and their generals. Germany did this because there was an increasing number in the German leadership who believed this war was a preventative war. That Russia and France were going to someday attack Germany. Someday they're going to attack us. We know they're going to do this. So they're looking into the future and they're predicting a war. And so we have to attack now. This is not preemptive. Preemptive means the enemy's massing on the borders, you know they're coming, so you attack to kind of spoil their offensive. No, preventative means you're guessing down the road. And this is another example of this is exactly the way that many southern states felt in the Confederacy. We have to secede, which they knew meant civil war, because someday the North would be too strong, someday the Republican Party would be too strong. Talking 1860. That's what they believed, and they believed they had no choice. We have to go. They saw it as a preventative war of the Confederacy, just as the Germans did. They could have stopped it right there. And so, no one country deserves all the blame, but Germany deserves the most. Yeah, Austria was being incompetent, but they could have been stopped by Germany. And yeah, Russia didn't have to mobilize, but it wouldn't, the trigger, so they deserve some of the blame. Britain certainly did not have to enter it, so they deserve some of the blame. Oh, so let's review them. I went through the 5 big causes of the reason for war. I went through this sheet of paper here, and industrialization, old monarchs, imperialism. What was it? The last 2 I saved of those 5 reasons were the most important though. What was that? Devotion to the state or wanting your own state? That's the nationalism, that's pan-Slavism, all that. And also, what was the next one? Yeah, alliances in militarism, the arms race, building up all the weapons. What was the ship that personified the arms race? And so we should take the Dreadnought out for a spin on the Canyon Ferry. Yeah. We could clear the Missouri.
Sorry.
And, so Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. Who assassinated him? What was the name of the terrorist group? And who gave them the weapons and everything else? Serbia. And so what did they call that 3 or 4 weeks afterwards? That war just kind of exploded on people. What did they call that time?
July crisis?
The July crisis. All those weeks. Austria gave them a blank check. What did Austria issue Serbia on the 23rd? Yeah, that ultimatum. And Serbia did not agree to all 10, and they had caveats. So Austria declared war. Who mobilized next? Russia. And then the generals could say, Russia's mobilizing, what do we have to do? And France then had no choice, because they knew if Germany mobilizes, that means Germany's attacking. They have no choice. So, on that happy note, oh, you like the cartoon? It's everyone pointing at each other to blame each other for the war. There's elements of truth to this, but I think this is fitting. The peace of Europe murdered the Hun. Was there what?
The piece of Europe is like obnoxious.
So,
Look at the little boy on the right. What's he doing?
he's up to something.
He is scheming.
Did you hear that too? What was that?
As well.
And this can only mean one thing. Who wants to write a thesis? The answer is, of course, overwhelming. So-
I'm not one girl. I'm not.
The hand's going up.
It took a while to process.
She's like, she's so excited, I get to do this. Yes, that's what she's doing. So, just to review very quickly, here's an example from progressive one to reform economics in the United States. Remember, X, the main point of the question, you'll get the main points. Y, your position, tying the A, B, and C together. A, B, and C, those are your topics of your paragraph. Just to review, so you see one, just to remind you, that's good. That's a darn good thesis statement. Wow. All of it would be tied together by the progressives wanting the federal government to act. First paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. Sound good? Hey, let's get a different question. Who would like a different question? Once again, people are voting overwhelmingly. They're voting early, they're voting often. It's a beaut election. There you go. You get to write a thesis statement. Now, here's the best part about this. I know there's volume written on this. You pick the three you feel the most confident about writing about. We're not writing it now, but just imagine you're writing it. You got the ghostly figure of a man in a gas mask. Gee, I wonder if there'd be a movie character. Yeah. Now, we literally just went over them, so they should be somewhere in your head. The major cause. Let's see. Yeah, that's something. And the thing about the why, something to tie them together. Now, if you're not sure, you could just put down diplomatic problems. It's a little vague, but they're. Who else? Who else? For the sake of the grading, I'll make a change. I know what you did. Okay, go back through and make sure you have the main, the causes of World War I. You address World War I, you say causes. You have those ideas in there. And then make sure you have something to tie it together, and then an A, B, and C. And that will be your topic sentence or your topics for each of your body paragraphs. Go back and look. Now, look. For each one. All right. Now that you're done, go to exchange with a neighbor, exchange it, read it, and see if you can talk through it, and decide if you can do the A, B, and C.
Show me yours. What? The council will want to regulate like systematic problems such as industrialization of military power. I want to consider
All right. Did anybody read one that blew them away? Anybody read a thesis statement that arguably changed your life? It set you on a new path. You did? Okay, so Mason, think probably real quick. Mason's gonna read his real quick. And then James read yours. All right, here we go. Here's a couple examples.
The principal causes of World War I were a result of rampant imperialism at the time, as shown by the introduction of nationalism, the Second Industrial Revolution, and the escalation of militarism.
Yeah, and it's going to tie everything of the other imperialism. Are you just finishing or finish yours real quick?
No.
You don't want to? Okay. Go ahead.
I'm ready for this.
I'm excited.
This bitter divide was caused by industrialization, arms race, and mobilization. These political changes presented the perfect opportunity for instability.
Yeah, so you combine combination of instability and the alliances. Very good. Anybody else like to read theirs? Or want to read somebody else's? Go ahead.
The primary causes of World War I are the tense relationships between European countries, exacerbated by nationalism, militarism, and rebellions against.
Good. And you have three elements and know exactly where you're going. And you're tying together. What is your why again? Yeah, tense relationships. So you put diplomatic problems. If you can't really come up with a definite one, You can use political changes, social changes, economic changes, tense relationships. That works. And or you can use go right. The essence of it is militarism or imperialism, and that's what's causing it. Or the alliance system. Any others? One more volunteer, or should I volunteer something? Go ahead, read yours. I've been waiting for yours all day. Good. We tied together with imperialism. That's good. Good thesis statement. Know exactly where you're going. Who used July Crisis? Anyone use? Good. I like July Crisis to be a good one in there too. You're just really seen in the July Crisis or something like that. You want to see mine? Let's look at my beautiful thesis statement. So, A, B, and C. I just wanted to get the July Crisis in there. That's why I put it that way.
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh.
Militarism across here. This is it.
Oh, I did. Oh. I wanted it clear. I might change that one. That's one thing about your thesis statement. So I typed it down real quick. Hey, in a timed essay, you don't have a lot of time to go through your sentences. But obviously, I should have done this. If you're writing a thesis statement, that's one to make sure you go back and edit. Which I obviously should have. But that's really important. Or another one. So here's a counterfactual. Despite my first point, subtopic, X to Y due to B and C. So despite militarism, nationalism, and archery fronts group. So, really basic one, really simple. We are going to do a DBQ next week. So, start reviewing it, start going over. We'll do a few more things, but it's time to start going over it. It's going to be on. What's your good DBQ topic? Can we find enough documents? I agree. Why we're tired of both Dakotas. Two things. There's plenty of them. I just put a bunch of North Dakota jokes. You're so excited. It might be on a little. The United States didn't ratify the Treaty of Versailles. That could be a really good topic. So speaking of that, oh, we're not going to get another one. So let's go in and jump right into it. And so here, right when the war began, the feeling across the capitals of the great power was best described as a euphoria. Just overwhelmingly excited for war. Overwhelmingly excited. And here you see French soldiers going off to the trains and being greeted as conquering hero. I like this one. These are French cavalry going through Lille. And look how the cavalry was in 1914. There's machine guns, there's heavy artillery, and they look like they're going to fight with Napoleon. They still have the metal plates that really do nothing in this war, the plumed helmets. So they still had elements of the old. Those are Russians celebrating in front of the Summer Palace in St. Petersburg. Here are some of the millions, over 1 million, young British men who volunteered for the war. In fact, so many volunteered that it shut down all the factories because they all left their jobs and they had to pull them out of the army because these essential jobs were gone. That's how ill-prepared Britain was. Germany, it was just unbelievable. This idea that finally German greatness will be shown. Here are reserves going off, so she's saying goodbye to his wife. Remember, they have reserves for 20 years. And you notice the flowers in the hair as they march off. Here they're getting onto boxcars for a pleasant ride to the frontier. And it says, on to Paris. And 18-year-olds were allowed in. If they're 18 and a half, they were allowed to volunteer early. So they would all be ready to go in October. if the war, but they were really nervous. They thought the war might be over before they could fight. And another one, giving a German soldier on his way a loaf of bread. So, all over, just celebrations. Let me show you a pretty famous picture. In front of the Opera House in Munich, they have this big square, and there are all these people there to volunteer to fight. And anybody who was not in the army, for whatever reason, were not in the reserves, either 18 and a half and or older than that, but weren't in the army, were allowed to volunteer right then. And so here's a picture. And later, this political party down the road would actually comb through this and find somebody who was there, who happened to be there, who volunteered. This person had fled Austria because he was ironically avoiding the Austrian draft. He would be drafted by the Austrian army, caught up in the euphoria, joined the Bavarian army, which fought under the German flag, and his political party down the road would find this because it was important for propaganda for the party. You probably can guess who that is. A failed artist by the name of Adolf Hitler. So Hitler would join, and part of Hitler's political persona was that he was a war hero. And he wasn't an officer. No, he was a war hero. Hitler was a war hero. Hitler was awarded the Iron Cross twice for bravery. He wasn't an officer, so he could appeal to common soldiers. He ran messages, and that would be very difficult to do. You'd have to sometimes expose yourself to fire, and he was awarded the Iron Cross one time for going through almost half a mile of exposed area where the British could fire upon him, and he survived and got the message through. And they used telephone lines, but they'd be blown up because of the shelling, so you needed guys that literally carried the messages. Wireless were too big and too inconsistent at that time. So here he is with his troops and friends in Belgium, his comrades. And if you're going to run messages, I think you understand you have to be a master of disguise. And so he could dart through. Now, this is a warning to all of you. If somebody goes around and they have an X over their head, be very scared. They just have an X floating wherever they go. Okay, someone put a little mark, that's Adolf Hitler. Now you notice facial hair was very important. The problem with that mustache was, though, it got in the way of something. It got in the way of the gas mask. And so veterans, or people in the army, if they wanted to keep facial hair, had to cut most of their beards off, and the mustache had to be trimmed to just a little mustache. So Hitler wore that mustache as a symbol that he was a veteran and he had been through gas attacks. That's what that mustache was about. And it was really a thing after the war. About May 7th, 1945, it became really unpopular in Germany. I don't know why. Something about surrendering. And if the Russians catch you with that. But moving on. Here also are British bobbies jumping into the Thames of Life Fest. I have no reason to show you that, but I wanted to show you that. And I know exactly what you're thinking. I was expecting that picture. I've been waiting all year. Now I can go home. So, here's the big right wing. And they had to sweep through Belgium. They actually went around the Netherlands because they didn't want the Netherlands they wanted a neutral country there. So the Netherlands would remain neutral throughout World War I. And they swept through Belgium and Luxembourg. But the problem was, for the Germans, Belgium put up a fight. Belgium did have a well-trained army and a huge national guard where everybody up to the age of 45, every man was in their national guard. And they took their rifles and the ammunition, had it at home. And so, and they had forts along the Meuse River. Every city had a series of forts around it. So there was a formidable force. And they had to get through that and march and fight the French all in 6 weeks. It was a timetable that they had to meet. Here's Belgian forces. Yes, they wore blue too. And I know what you're thinking. Those top hats are awesome. And it was a big deal. They used dogs to pull their light machine guns and light gear. So those, they call them war dogs. I know. Dogs. War dogs. But at Liège, which is on the Meuse River, that had a series of forts, all these stars. Here's the pictures of the forts surrounding them. The forts are all still there. This is this is Belgian contractors building the fort, and look how thick the walls are. There's a man standing, look how thick the cement walls. So the forts are still there. You go to Liège, it's kind of an industrial town, but the area in Belgium is really pretty, a lot of low mountains. It's a neat area. But those forts are there. You can go visit them, because what are you going to do with cement that thick? They're there. And I've been to one. It was really interesting. But the Germans had to get there, go through there, and the first couple attacks failed. And their timetable was now off. But to show how war had changed, German contractors, this massive steel firm named Krupp, they had built a cannon, piece of artillery that was 420 millimeters wide. The shell was 16 inches. It's about 16 inches. That means it weighed over 2,000 pounds. And they brought this up. It had to be hauled in 3 separate pieces. Each piece had to be pulled by 100 horses. They couldn't use railroads because Belgium destroyed the railroads. It had to be put on a flat piece of cement. So Arthur Krupp, who was the head of the company, the workers immediately named the gun after his daughter. So the gun will be called Big Bertha. Poor Bertha. For the rest of her life, it's going to be associated with this. That gives you an idea of the size of this shell. And it would soon be obsolete because it only could fire about 8,000 yards, so it would be vulnerable to other attack. But this shell was so big that they started shelling the Belgian forts. And one by one, they destroyed it. Just knocked it, start hitting the roof, which is the least thick, and it literally drove the defenders mad inside of the shelling. And one by one, the forts fell. And it showed now the new power, the new explosives might change the entire course of the war, the entire course of every military. It changed everything. These are the couple shots. These are the turrets on top of the fort. These are destructions of the fort. You can go visit them. There's just kind of rubble. Some you can go in still. Some have survived because Belgium then would evacuate a few of the other ones. But the thing is, once they occupied parts of Belgium, they never took it all. But they really feared guerrillas. All of these irregular forces, and those are in with their rifles at home. And the German soldiers were indoctrinated, especially the reserves who were following up the main force. Every Belgian man might have a rifle ready to shoot you in the back. And how do you control a hostile population? They didn't want to leave a lot of men there. So they did a strategy as old as there is this war. But first, before we get to that, these are German forces marching through Belgium in a very rare film from 1914. Marching past their officers, and then the cavalry pops in, and look at what the cavalry are carrying. They still have lances, but they're going to joust. That's cavalry from 1914. I think this footage is really pretty remarkable because the cameras have these big, massive things. You couldn't just carry it around. That's cool they kept that. Well, how do you fight guerrillas? Well, the United States has done this. Other countries did this. They did it through terror. And soon this would be dubbed the Rape of Belgium. So 2 things, terror. And what they would do are reprisals for any kind of guerrilla attack or any suspected guerrilla attack. And that meant murdering hostages or destroying whole towns. At the town of Devant on the Meuse, German soldiers, reserves thought they were fired upon. They lined up, and this is kind of a stylized picture of it, but they lined up every male they could catch over the age of 20 and shot them in cold blood right along the river. Here are the bodies. You see the river right here? These are bodies of Belgian civilians. So they did this. And they did this in other towns too. Also, once they realized the war was going to last more than a couple months, they begin to round up slave laborers to take back to Germany to replace men who had gone to the front. And slave laborers had a dual logic to it. Here is a picture, and it's kind of stylized, but of Germans taking these hostages back to Germany as slave laborers. But 2 reasons. First off, they can replace workers, but there's something else. They're hostages. you now have people in Belgian people, and also French, but Belgian, inside Germany. So you commit guerrilla acts. We have people there we can kill. Are you sure you want to do these attacks? They did the same thing in Russia too, when they attacked and took parts of Russia. And yes, they would do this in World War II. And what age would they want the slave labor? They took all ages, but one age in particular. A little bit younger, 15 to 20. So all of you would have been hostages and sent back to slave labor. And so that's telling their parents and everybody else, don't do it. We have your children. And they would also put out lists of names in Belgian towns. This is just a list of names. And they said, any guerrilla attacks, and these will be shot as reprisal. And they would let them know, these are the names. So they let the people know, you're on that list, you will be rounded up and shot if there's any attack. So they did it by terror. Now, Germany did this, but you can imagine what Allied propaganda is going to do. They heard about this, and soon the cry of poor little Belgium and the rape of Belgium went everywhere. And Allied propaganda would use this as a reason to destroy German atrocities. And the Germans were dubbed the Hun. They actually dubbed themselves that, but it turned into an insult. So you can see a lot of these kinds of things. Like here's, remember Belgium. And you know it's standing on a woman and her child. Exaggerating. Not completely. Here, remember Belgium, it lists today. Woman and child running away. Here is from near Edinburgh Castle. And this was done during the war. And this is the valor of German culture. And it's Germans destroying women and children, or killing women and children. There's elements of truth there. And of course, it's going to be British, because the British would do it more than the French because of two reasons. That's why Britain entered the war. And secondly, Germany's occupying French territory and doing the same thing too. But Belgium, because it's just a little tiny country. So here are three more. That's 1914 in the middle, 1918, this is 1917, the rape of Belgium. That's in the United States. And this was effective propaganda against Germany by the United States, 1917, 1918. Here?
No.
Oh, this, yeah. Yeah. Very effective. Very. Was there an element of truth? Yes. Did they exaggerate? Oh, yeah. And Germans to this day deny they did it. Now, part of the reason they deny it is because they have this other war coming up, and they're trying to say, hey, that was an aberration. We weren't bad. Now, let's be clear. Allies did similar things, and don't forget the U.S. just was in the Philippines with the Filipino insurrection. So life is complex. So speaking of that, the French did their Plan 17 right here. And this is going to be called the Battle of the Frontiers. And it was a disaster. French soldiers, here they are charging over a mountain in Alsace. Here, you can see French soldiers, you really see the uniform there. They had a technique back there for color photography. And there are color photographs. They aren't colorized, they're real color photographs. But we don't know how they did it, because it was so inefficient and expensive. When they came up with new methods, they just totally forgot how to do the old way. So they've never totally perfected it again. I find that fascinating. And they charged right into entrenched Germans. They were reservists, but they're in trenches with machine guns. There were 1 million French casualties in 3 weeks. That's killed, wounded, and missing. The poor French soldiers charged into machine guns. Well, the British also sent troops. But the British only had about 100,000 men. And when the Germans finally swept through here, there was a place, oh, right here, it's called the Battle of the Mons. But the British had 100,000 troops. The Germans had 3 million men in that right hook. And they just were overwhelmed. Those are British soldiers. That's British soldiers at the Battle of the Mons. There are German soldiers attacking them. And the British sent troops, they got involved, and then they retreated and so they started heading actually to the Mediterranean. We're jumping right to here. They started going. But here's the important thing. Germany thought they had 6 weeks. Russia, they assumed no way they could attack until September. In 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks, 700,000 Russian soldiers attacked here. And 300,000 attacked here. Russia did what people thought was the impossible. Now, they were totally ill-prepared. Significant numbers. I've seen numbers as high as half. That seems too many, but significant numbers of Russian soldiers didn't even have rifles. Yet they were told to attack. Which, by the way, attacking without a rifle is really bad for the morale. Not just of the men without rifles. Just go. You'll pick up the rifles of the dead. What does that tell the men with rifles? Yeah, good luck. You're dying for Russia. So, the Germans so freaked out that they actually took 300,000 men from this right hook to send back to stop the Russians from taking Berlin. And they didn't make it in time for maybe one of the most important battles in the history of humankind. The Battle of Tannenberg. It actually would be fighting for almost 2 weeks, even though it would be the last week of August would be the majority of the fighting. The Battle of Tannenberg. Battle of Tannenberg. And the Russians attacked in 2 big waves. This is the German border. This wave here, the few German forces there were much more professionally trained. They knew the terrain, using the terrain, and the Russians were just were pushing forward so fast. They outflanked them in a series of battles. We can't go into details of it, but a series of day-long fights, and destroyed the Russian army. 100,000 Russian soldiers surrendered. It was a devastating defeat for the Russians at Tannenberg. That's what we need to know. It's an amazing battle. We can't go into details of it. And then this wing would be destroyed about a week and a half later, Missouri and Lakes. But all we care about in this class is Tannenberg. Anybody wondering, why do we care about the Russians and the Germans? How does that affect the United States? Oh, does it affect it? This battle, the Germans immediately begin to think, that's our decisive defeat of Russia. We thought that would be in the middle of September, but it already happened. So no matter what else happens, in the back of their head, they're thinking, we've destroyed Russia. We've kind of already won half of the war. And this will change the entire course of history. So, while that's going on, these are German soldiers on the advance in France. And they were just as exhausted as they feared. And they could hardly move, and it didn't look like they're going to go. Those are French soldiers on the charge there. Those are British soldiers. And we're coming to one more huge battle. We got to get for the bell rings. The Battle of the Marne, a 7-day battle. What happened was the Germans were out of troops, and they sent men back east. There are traffic jams. They're out of supplies. They're exhausted. Instead of sweeping around, they cut to the east of Paris. And this is called in history one of the most controversial ever, the left turn. And that allowed the French, who were putting everything they had in Paris, to counterattack. And they were able to convince the British to join them. The British were leaving. We'll finish it real fast tomorrow. Make sure you have that packet tomorrow, the one that the maps were in. You need it tomorrow. And on that happy note, goodbye.
Is the reading of teams due Monday still?
Yeah, the reading team's due on Monday. Tomorrow we're going to do a couple notes. Oh, yeah. And then, yeah, so yeah, you're right. So I'm going to assign the Espionage Act. So, have up to 1,000. But then, I'm going to assign on Thursday. I actually have longer than nowadays. The Espionage Act, that last page, that packet, that would be due on Tuesday. And it has to be consensus.
Is it
Oh,
posted?
Well, there are questions, so one will be a short answer, the other one's going to be one or two. And then, oh, then you have to get the bid. I will post it. We're gonna watch the documentary.
And then do we need the stuff we need
For the what? I'll give it on my.
So we're doing the questions in the packet to go with the video tomorrow.
Yeah, do that. Thank you for reminding me, because I knew it, I just thought about it, but then. All right. And these out, everybody, thank you. Hold on to it, I'll come back and get it, okay?
This is an actual test.
Oh. Ready, get back ready. Should we put her name down? Thank you for noting that, Bruce. Yeah, she did that, I just stuck it on top. So let me get these out to you. It's out of 27. Some people might have to take a point off, I'm sorry, but there's a problem with over 26.
Solid 18.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like a field of like. I want it to be like actually big, though, not a small house.
I thought we just had this. Yeah, I remember this. This was the,
Yeah, I did, I'll give it to you. Thank you for handing those out, you want good people. I had to take a point off on a couple, I know, it's sad. But that's the way life is sometimes, isn't it?
I got the ones that I do that I got wrong.
Oh, let me put the key up.
Oh, I got this.
Just take one off.
Yeah, I took a point off. All right, that's key. So for 26, you needed city manager, or I did allow if you put city commissioner or city manager, but you had to have city manager. And some people, city commissioner, I had to take a point off. I know, that's why.
What was the longest of this class again?
Roosevelt.
First watch, city commission.
The Roosevelt.
Oh, Roosevelt Park, yeah.
That makes sense.
Most do was
Yeah.
Just miss out.
Oh, really the reading.
Yeah.
I'm not even remember.
All right, look at the ones you missed. That goes away.
I didn't know. I thought. I just threw it.
No, I'm not. Actually, the answer was city manager. But since I gave it to you, I should take it off since you put city. I should have take it off for everybody who put city commissioner on. But I didn't. I'm too nice, huh?
No.
But you had to have city manager somewhere.
City manager out. That's back in the slum.
All right, I've not typed it in. I'll get this typed in. It won't take a second. I was going to do this yesterday and I didn't. Huh? Oh, if you want to look at the questions real fast. Anybody else want to look at the quiz? Just look at the ones you missed real quick. I'm just look at the ones you missed real quick. You already know? I want you to look and see what the ones you missed. All right then, let's turn in this. You can keep your answer sheet. Turn in this. All righty. You're a good man.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I just scored on the back.
What?
Nothing ever felt good.
All right, so name. All right, next. Would you like some more familiar story? I'll tell the story when I got all your attention. Did we get to this? We got to this, right? I think we're going past it. We got this?
Yeah, we talked about how Russia mobilized, and that was talking.
Did we get this?
Yeah.
Let me show you this headline.
Yeah.
It is funny, that's the real headline, it's almost the same. Good satire has an element of reality. And did I show you this? How about this? We didn't get this? All right. So August 4th, we'll come back and review in a second, but August 4th, that is the date that's considered the beginning of World War I. August 4th. Well, see, it's called the World War because we have all these events that happen, but I'll explain why in just 1 second. I'm just shutting this off really quickly.